My boss tore up my contract laughing, but when he read what was written, he fainted. Emily Johnson watched silently as her boss of 15 years destroyed what she believed was her professional life. The man laughed with cruel satisfaction, tossing pieces of paper into the air like confetti at a private celebration. It was when he noticed something handwritten on the back of the fragments, slowly falling to the ground. The smile vanished from Richard Wilson's face as he recognized his own handwriting in notes he thought he'd destroyed long ago. Emily remained still, watching the exact moment he realized the magnitude of the mistake he'd just made. "What is this?" he murmured, crouching to gather the pieces with trembling hands. "Those are your notes about the fake contracts from Hope Builders, Mr. Wilson," Emily replied calmly, despite her racing heart. "The ones you asked me to falsify 2 years ago." Richard's face instantly paled. He knew exactly what she was talking about. For years, he had diverted funds meant for a housing project for low-income families in Newark, in the greater New York area. What he didn't know was that Emily had kept every piece of evidence, every document, every proof of his wrongdoing. You couldn't have kept this," he stammered, still clutching the fragments. "I didn't just keep it, Mr. Wilson. I documented everything. Every dollar diverted, every altered contract, every family left without a home because you needed another offshore account." Emily had worked as an executive secretary at Wilson Construction since she was 22. Now, at 37, she knew every secret of that family-run company that publicly presented itself as one of the most reputable in the state. For years, she had turned a blind eye to minor irregularities, believing they were just American shortcuts to speed up bureaucratic processes. Everything changed when Richard started pressuring employees to falsify documents related to the Meadow Gardens housing project. The development was supposed to provide affordable homes for 300 families who had been waiting 5 years in the city housing program. The money was secured through a partnership between the mayor's office and private investors. But Richard had found a loophole. By slightly altering the plans and using cheaper materials, he could divert nearly 40% of the funds to personal accounts. The houses would still be delivered, but with far lower quality than promised. Entire families would receive homes that would start showing structural issues within a few years. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, Emily discovered the scheme by chance. One morning, she arrived early at the office and overheard Richard on the phone discussing figures that didn't match the official budgets. At first, she thought it was a mistake, but when he asked her to change dates on already signed contracts, her suspicions were confirmed. "Emily, I need you to change the date on this contract from August to September," he had said 3 months earlier, handing her a document. "It's just a technical adjustment." "But Mr. Wilson, this contract was already filed with the mayor's office with the August date," she replied, examining the paper. "Exactly. That's why I need you to figure it out. Use your creativity." In that moment, Emily understood this wasn't a technical adjustment. Richard was manipulating dates to justify delays that were actually caused by diverting materials to other private projects. He sold the cement and steel meant for the affordable homes to competing construction companies, earning extra money while families waited. The first time she refused to falsify a document, Richard was surprised. For 15 years, Emily had never questioned his orders. She was the perfect employee, discreet, efficient, and seemingly submissive. "Are you sure you don't want to cooperate, Emily?" he asked, his tone mixing disappointment and threat. "I thought we were a team." "We are a team, Mr. Wilson. But I can't do this. Think carefully. You have a daughter in college, don't you? And your mother needs those expensive arthritis medications. It would be a shame if you lost your job now." Emily felt a chill in her stomach. Richard knew her financial situation because she had always been open about her struggles. Olivia, her 20-year-old daughter, was studying law at an expensive private university. Her mother, Margaret, 68, relied on imported medications that cost nearly $1,000 a month. Emily's salary was enough to cover these expenses, but any interruption would be devastating. For weeks, she was torn between financial pressure and her conscience. Richard gradually increased the pressure, asking for small favors she knew were wrong. A document here, a date there, an altered figure somewhere else. Each time she hesitated, he reminded her of her financial responsibilities. It was Margaret who, unaware of the situation, gave the advice that changed everything. "Honey, your father always used to say something," the elderly woman remarked during a Sunday lunch. "He said there's no point having money for medicine if you lose the health of your soul. I'd rather endure body pain than see you suffering because of wrong choices." Emily looked at her mother, who had worked as a housekeeper for 40 years to support the family with dignity. Margaret had never had educational opportunities, but she possessed a wisdom no university could teach. At that moment, Emily decided she wouldn't be an accomplice to Richard's crimes. The following Monday, when he asked her to alter another contract, she refused outright. "I won't do this, Mr. Wilson, and you know you shouldn't ask me to." "Getting moralistic now, Emily? After 15 years?" he snapped, irritated. "No, sir, I'm just doing what I should have done all along." It was then that Richard decided to get rid of her, but Emily had already anticipated this possibility. During the weeks of pressure, she had secretly photographed documents, recorded phone conversations she overheard, and noted every irregularity she witnessed. More importantly, she discovered where Richard kept his personal notes about the embezzlement. He had a habit of scribbling calculations and observations in the margins and backs of official documents. He thought no one paid attention, but Emily had always been observant. She noticed he often wrote the actual amounts next to the official figures, as if he needed to remember the difference. One afternoon, when Richard left for a meeting, Emily managed to access his personal files. There, she found dozens of documents with his handwritten notes, detailing exactly how the corruption scheme worked. She photographed everything with her phone and later printed copies at a local print shop. But Emily went further. She discovered Richard had made notes on the back of her own employment contract. Likely out of carelessness, he had used the document as scratch paper during a phone call about embezzled funds. The notes were there in his own handwriting, amounts, dates, even bank account names. Knowing her boss would probably try to fire her to get rid of an inconvenient witness, Emily prepared a plan. She made a copy of her contract with Richard's notes on the back and kept the original in a safe place. When he finally decided to tear it up in front of her, as a gesture of power and humiliation, he didn't know he was destroying the copy. Now, watching Richard kneeling on the floor, desperately trying to piece the fragments together like a puzzle, Emily felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because she finally had concrete evidence against him. Sadness because the man she once respected had revealed himself to be so small and cruel. "Where's the original?" he asked, his voice hoarse with desperation. "Safe, along with everything else I've documented about your business dealings." Richard slowly stood up, his face red with anger and panic. "You don't know who you're messing with, Emily. I can ruin your professional life in New York City. No one will hire you." "Maybe so, Mr. Wilson, but at least I'll sleep soundly, knowing I did the right thing." Just then the office door opened, and in walked Jennifer Wilson, Richard's daughter and the company's lawyer. She had arrived for a meeting about a new project and found her father on the floor, picking up papers, and Emily standing with a determined expression. "Dad, what's going on here?" Jennifer asked, taking in the strange scene. Richard tried to compose himself quickly. "Nothing serious, sweetheart, just settling a work issue with Emily." But Emily decided it was time for the truth to come out. "Jennifer, your father just tore up my work contract because I refused to falsify documents for the Meadow Gardens project." "What?" Jennifer looked from her father to Emily, confused. "What's this about falsifying documents?" "Jennifer, don't listen to her. She's making things up because she got fired," Richard said, but his voice didn't sound convincing. Emily took a deep breath. Jennifer had always been different from her father. A Columbia law graduate, she had returned to the family business with ideals of modernizing and making their dealings more transparent. Emily had witnessed several arguments between father and daughter about ethical business practices. "Jennifer, I have proof your father embezzled funds from the city housing program. He altered contracts, used cheaper materials, and transferred money to personal accounts overseas." "Lies," Richard shouted. "You have no proof." Emily took out her phone and showed some of the photos she had taken. I have documents, recordings, and even his handwritten notes, including on the back of my own contract, which he just tore up thinking he was humiliating me. Jennifer took the phone and examined the images. Her expression gradually changed as she recognized her father's handwriting and the numbers that didn't match the official budget she knew. "Dad, is this true?" she asked, her voice trembling. Richard tried one last desperate move. "Sweetheart, are you going to believe a resentful employee or your own father?" "I'll believe the evidence," Jennifer replied, handing Emily's phone back. "And from what I've seen here, we have a very serious problem." Richard's phone rang at that moment. It was his wife, Barbara. "Richard, I need to talk to you urgently. A strange letter arrived in the mail." "Not now, Barbara, I'm busy. It's about irregularities in the company. It says you should contact someone named Emily Johnson if you want to understand better." Emily smiled faintly. She had sent an anonymous letter to Barbara 3 days earlier, knowing she might eventually need support from someone in the family. Barbara had always been a sensible woman and, unlike her husband, genuinely cared about social issues. "I'll be right there," Barbara said before hanging up. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, continuing. Richard was cornered. His daughter had seen the evidence, his wife was on her way, and Emily had documents that could destroy not just his career, but his freedom. He slumped heavily into his chair, running his hands over his face. "What do you want, Emily?" he asked, defeated. "Justice, Mr. Wilson. The families in Meadow Gardens deserve the homes they were promised, with the quality they were promised. And if I agree to do that, will you forget everything? It's not just about fixing the houses now, it's about repairing the damage already done and making sure this never happens again." Jennifer stepped in. "Emily, do you have a lawyer?" "No, I can't afford one. I'll represent you pro bono, and I'll make sure my father is held accountable for everything he's done." "Jennifer," Richard protested, "you're my daughter." "That's exactly why I'm doing the right thing. I won't let our family name be tarnished any further by your actions." Barbara arrived 20 minutes later, accompanied by Michael Thompson, the company's accountant of 10 years. She had called him on the way, asking him to bring the financial records from the last 2 years. "Richard, we need to talk," Barbara said firmly as she entered the office. Michael Thompson greeted everyone quietly and placed a folder on the desk. "Mrs. Wilson asked me to review some accounts. I found discrepancies that need clarification." Emily watched Richard grow even paler. Michael was an honest and capable man. If he'd found discrepancies, there were real problems with the numbers. "What kind of discrepancies?" Jennifer asked. "Money withdrawals that don't match registered projects, materials purchased that never arrived at the sites, payments to companies that provided no services." Barbara looked at her husband with an expression Emily had never seen before, a mix of disappointment, anger, and resolve. "Richard, how long has this been going on?" "Barbara, I can explain." "How long?" she repeated, firmer. "A few years," he muttered. "How many years?" Richard didn't answer. It was Michael who spoke. "From the records I reviewed, at least 5 years, maybe more." Barbara closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the information. When she opened them again, Emily saw a woman transformed. "Emily, please sit down, we need to talk." Emily sat, still clutching her phone with the evidence. "First, I apologize on behalf of the Wilson family for what my husband has done to you and these families. Second, I need to understand exactly what happened so we can resolve this the best way possible." Over the next hour, Emily recounted everything, from the early pressures to falsified documents to uncovering the entire scheme. She showed the photos, explained how she documented it all, and detailed the impact the fraud would have on the beneficiary families. Barbara asked pointed questions, always focusing on the human aspects of the situation. Jennifer took notes, already considering the legal implications. Michael cross-checked the numbers Emily presented with the official records. Richard remained silent, visibly defeated. "Emily, you're right," Barbara said after hearing everything. I can't allow our company to cause this kind of harm to people. I want you to know we'll make it right. How? Emily asked. First, your job is secure. In fact, I want to promote you to Quality and Ethics Supervisor. Your role will be to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. Mrs. Wilson, second, we'll use our personal resources to fix the issues in the homes already delivered. Every family will get the quality originally promised. But that'll cost a fortune, Richard protested. It doesn't matter. It's our responsibility. And if we don't have enough money in the company, we'll sell personal assets. Jennifer agreed with her mother. Emily, I also want you to help me implement new internal controls. We need systems that prevent this kind of thing from happening again. Emily felt a mix of relief and disbelief. She had prepared for the worst possible scenario, and instead she was being promoted and gaining powerful allies. There's one thing I don't understand, said Ryan, examining some papers. How did you find out about the offshore accounts, Emily? I overheard a phone call by chance. Mr. Wilson was discussing transfers with someone and mentioned account numbers. Richard, said Barbara, staring at her husband, how many accounts do you have that I don't know about? Richard hesitated before answering. 3. And how much money is in those accounts? Barbara, it's complicated. How much money? She insisted. Approximately $2 million. The silence that followed was heavy. Emily mentally calculated that this amount would be enough to completely resolve the issues with the housing project and still leave money for additional improvements. That money is coming back to the United States immediately, declared Barbara, and it will be used to repair the damage done to the families. Barbara, you don't understand. If I bring that money back, there will be questions. I could face serious trouble. You're already in serious trouble, Richard. The question now is how we minimize it, Jennifer intervened. Dad, as a lawyer, I can assure you that cooperating is your best option. If this reaches the authorities without you taking corrective action, the consequences will be much worse. Emily watched the family unraveling and rebuilding before her eyes. Barbara, who had always seemed like a submissive wife, was showing impressive strength. Jennifer, whom Emily had seen grow up since she was a teenager, was proving to be an ethical and determined professional. And Richard, the man she had feared for years, was shrinking into a small, frightened figure. Emily, said Barbara, there's one thing I need to know. Why didn't you report this to the authorities immediately? Emily thought before answering. Because I wanted to give things a chance to be resolved internally first. These families need homes, not scandals that could delay the project even further. That shows your wisdom, Barbara remarked, and your genuine concern for the affected people. Michael Thompson, who had remained quiet during the family conversation, finally spoke. Mrs. Barbara, if I may, I have a suggestion. We can structure the regularization in a way that's transparent to the oversight agencies, but prioritizes the proper completion of the housing project. How so? Asked Jennifer. We can voluntarily report the irregularities, along with a correction plan already in place. That demonstrates good faith and usually results in lighter penalties. Barbara looked at Emily. What do you think? I think it makes sense. The important thing is that the families get what was promised. Then that's what we'll do, Barbara decided. Ryan, prepare all the necessary documentation. Jennifer, you'll represent us legally. Emily, you'll personally oversee the correction of every identified issue. And me? Asked Richard. You'll step away from the company's operations until everything is resolved, Barbara replied. And you'll start therapy to understand how we got to this point. Therapy? Yes. If we're going to rebuild our family and our company, I need to understand why you made these choices. And you need to understand too. Emily admired how Barbara was handling the situation. Instead of simply punishing or seeking revenge, she was focusing on constructive solutions. The phone on the table rang. It was Margaret, Emily's mother. Honey, sorry to bother you at work, but I got a strange call. A woman said you were in trouble and that I should come there. Emily closed her eyes. Richard had called her mother, trying one last psychological pressure move. Mom, everything's fine. Actually, it's much better than I expected. Are you sure? The woman sounded really worried. "I'm sure. I'll tell you everything when I get home tonight." When Emily hung up, Richard avoided her gaze. He knew she'd discovered his attempt to manipulate her through family. "Richard," said Barbara, who had overheard the conversation, "you called Emily's mother to pressure her. I thought that..." "Thought what? That intimidating a 68-year-old woman would solve anything?" Emily watched Barbara stand and walk to the window, looking at the street below. When she turned back, her eyes were watery, but her voice remained firm. "Emily, I want you to know that my husband's behavior doesn't represent the values I tried to teach my children, and it won't happen again. Mrs. Wilson, No need to say anything. I just want you to know that from now on, you have the full support of the Wilson family to do whatever's necessary to fix this situation." Jennifer stood and extended her hand to Emily. "Emily, welcome to the new Wilson Construction, a company that will do business with integrity." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. In the following weeks, Emily experienced a complete transformation in her professional life. Her new position as quality and ethics supervisor came with a significantly higher salary and, more importantly, real authority to implement changes. Her first task was to visit the Meadow Gardens housing development to personally assess the issues. Accompanied by Jennifer and a team of engineers, Emily spoke with every family that had already received their homes. Mrs. Dorothy Anderson, 72 years old, was the first resident they met. She had moved into her new home 3 months earlier, but was already dealing with kitchen leaks and cracks in the bedroom wall. "Sweetheart, at first I thought it was normal," she said, offering coffee to her visitors. "New houses sometimes have these little issues, right? But when my neighbor mentioned hers was the same, I started to worry." Emily explained they were there to fix all the problems at no cost to residents. "Really?" asked Mrs. Anderson skeptically. "This isn't some trick." "No trick, it's our obligation to deliver the home as promised." Jennifer added, "Mrs. Anderson, you'll receive a written guarantee that all repairs will be done with top-quality materials. And if any issues arise in the next 5 years, we'll fix them for free." The elderly woman began to cry. "You don't know what this means to me. I've rented my whole life. This little house is the first place that's truly mine." Emily felt a lump in her throat. It was for people like Mrs. Anderson that she had decided to confront Richard. Their next stop was the home of Robert and Susan Miller, a young couple with 2 small children. They had received their keys just a month ago, but had already identified electrical and plumbing issues. "The kitchen sink clogs every week," Susan explained, "and there's an outlet in the kids' room that gives shocks." Emily noted everything carefully. The accompanying engineer confirmed these were serious problems that could cause accidents. "We'll replace all the electrical and plumbing systems," Emily said. "And while the repairs are being done, the family will stay at a nearby hotel with all expenses covered." Robert and Susan exchanged glances, incredulous. "But why?" asked Robert. "No one's ever done this for folks like us." "Because you deserve a safe, well-built home," replied Jennifer. "And because it's our responsibility." Throughout the day, Emily and her team visited 23 families. Each home had similar issues: poor quality materials, shoddy workmanship, structural problems that could worsen over time. With every visit, Emily felt her determination to set things right grow stronger. By the end of the day, when they returned to the office, Barbara was waiting with more news. "Emily, I spoke with the mayor today. I explained our situation and our correction plan. He was impressed with our initiative and offered support from the mayor's office to speed up the necessary bureaucratic processes." "That's wonderful," said Emily. "How long do we estimate to fix all the issues?" "With the mayor's support and working double shifts, we can resolve everything in 3 months," replied the lead engineer. "And how much will it cost?" asked Jennifer. Michael Thompson, who had spent the day recalculating, presented the numbers. "Approximately $1,400,000. That includes top-quality materials, skilled labor, and temporary housing for the families during repairs." Barbara sighed but didn't hesitate. "Draft the budget. The funds from the overseas accounts will cover these costs easily." Emily admired Barbara's resolve. In just a few weeks, she had transformed from a submissive wife into a decisive business leader. Mrs. Wilson, may I ask you a personal question? Said Emily. Of course. How are you handling all this emotionally? Finding out your husband? Barbara gently interrupted. Emily, marriage is complicated. Richard isn't a bad person, but he lost his way somewhere. Right now, my priority is rebuilding our company and our family on solid values. And Mr. Wilson? How is he reacting to the changes? Richard is adjusting. He started therapy this week. It's too soon to know how he'll progress, but I'm willing to give him a chance to become the man I always believed he could be. Jennifer added, Emily, my father was always a good provider, and deep down, he has a good heart. But financial success kind of warped his priorities. Maybe this crisis is exactly what he needed to rethink his life. Emily reflected on those words. She had seen Richard only as a villain these past months, but perhaps the situation was more complicated than she'd imagined. That evening, when Emily got home, she found her mother preparing dinner in the small kitchen. Mum, I need to tell you something important that happened at work. Margaret stopped stirring the beans and sat at the table, giving her daughter her full attention. Emily told her everything: Richard's pressures, her refusal to falsify documents, the plan to document the irregularities, and the turnaround from the day before. So you got promoted? Asked Margaret. I did, with a much better salary. And those poor families will get better homes. They will. All of them. Margaret smiled and held her daughter's hands. Sweetheart, I'm proud of you. Your father would be proud too. Mom, it's what you taught me. Doing the right thing even when it's hard. And now, what will things be like from here on? Emily thought before answering. Different, very different, but better, I think. The next morning, Emily arrived at the office to find Richard waiting in the lobby. She hesitated for a moment, but decided to greet him normally. Good morning, Mr. Wilson. Emily, can we talk? In private. She led him to a small meeting room and closed the door. What can I do for you? Richard looked like he had aged years in just a few weeks. His clothes, once always impeccable, were wrinkled. His eyes were red as if he hadn't slept much. I want to apologize, he said, his voice low, for what I did to you, to the families, to my own family. Emily wasn't expecting this. Thank you for saying that, Mr. Wilson. Emily, you could have destroyed me completely. You could have gone straight to the police, to the press. Why didn't you? Because destroying doesn't solve problems. It only creates bigger ones. I started therapy, as Barbara suggested. I'm trying to understand how it got to this point, how I allowed myself to do these things. And what have you discovered? Richard sighed deeply. That at some point I stopped seeing people as people. They became just numbers, obstacles to my financial goals. I lost my humanity. Emily was surprised by his honesty. Mr. Wilson, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you start with the embezzlement? Was it just greed, or was there something else? Richard hesitated before answering. At first, it wasn't greed, it was fear. Fear of losing everything I'd built. The construction market is very unstable. One cancelled contract, an economic crisis, and you can lose decades of work overnight. So you started setting money aside as a safety net? Exactly. But then it became an addiction. Every extra dollar I managed to embezzle made me feel safer, more powerful. I stopped thinking about the consequences. Emily realized the situation was more complex than she'd imagined. Richard wasn't simply a greedy criminal. He was a man who had been consumed by fear and then by greed. Mr. Wilson, thank you for being honest with me. It helps me understand better how we got here. Emily, there's one thing I need to know. Can you forgive me? The question caught Emily off guard. She thought for a long moment before answering. Mr. Wilson, forgiveness is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but I see you're trying to change, and that's important. I understand, and I accept that. What I can say is that I'm not angry with you anymore. I was, but not anymore. Now I just want to focus on doing things right from here on out. Richard nodded, seeming relieved. There's one last thing, Emily. Barbara told me you have full authority to implement changes in the company. I want you to know You have my complete support. If you need anything from me, just ask. Thank you. Actually, there is one thing you can do. What? I want you to help me understand exactly how the embezzlement scheme worked, not to harm you, but to ensure our new controls are effective against this kind of thing. Richard agreed immediately. Of course, I can prepare a detailed report of everything I did wrong. It might help prevent future problems. In the following days, Emily worked intensely on implementing the new quality and ethics controls. With Jennifer's help, she created protocols requiring dual approval for all significant transactions, independent monthly audits, and a confidential channel for reports. More importantly, she established weekly visits to the construction sites, speaking directly with workers and personally checking the quality of materials and services. During one of these visits, Emily met George Williams, a 58-year-old experienced mason who had worked for the company for nearly a decade. "Ms. Emily, can I say something?" he said, approaching discreetly. "Of course, George, feel free to speak. You know we always knew something was wrong, right?" "What do you mean?" "The materials that arrived here weren't the same as what was listed on the paperwork. Weaker cement, thinner steel, watered-down paint. We saw it, but couldn't say anything." "Why couldn't you speak up?" "Because anyone who complained got fired, and everyone here has families to feed." Emily understood the problem was even bigger than she'd imagined. It wasn't just Richard acting alone. There was an entire system silencing workers who could have reported the irregularities. "George, this won't happen anymore. I'm creating a system where any worker can report problems without fear of retaliation." "Really?" "Really, and more. I want you to be our quality lead at this site. Your experience and honesty are exactly what we need." George was moved. "Ms. Johnson, I've worked in construction for 40 years. Never thought anyone would value what I know." "George, experience like yours is priceless, and honesty like yours is even more valuable." George's promotion had an immediate effect on the site. Other workers saw the new management truly valued integrity and skill, regardless of rank. Within 2 weeks, George identified multiple issues that would have gone unnoticed: poorly poured foundations, substandard electrical work, waterproofing floors, all fixed before becoming major problems. Barbara visited the site to see the changes firsthand. "Emily, I'm impressed with the progress. In just weeks, we can already see the difference in work quality." "Ms. Barbara, the secret is involving everyone. When workers feel valued and heard, they become our best quality inspectors." "What about families who already received faulty homes? How are repairs progressing?" "We started this week. 5 families are in hotels while we fix their homes. Each should take about 2 weeks to do properly." "Are they satisfied with the process?" "More than satisfied. Mrs. Dorothy called me yesterday crying with happiness. Said she never imagined anyone would care so much about someone like her." Barbara smiled. "Emily, you're transforming not just our company, but these people's lives. That's worth more than any financial profit." That afternoon, Emily got an unexpected call from Olivia, her daughter, calling from college. "Mum, you won't believe what happened today." "What, sweetheart?" "My business law professor used Wilson Construction as a positive example in class. He said you're implementing one of the best ethical compliance programs he's ever seen." Emily was surprised. "How did he know about it?" Seems news about the self-reporting and voluntary repair program spread in academic circles. Professors are using it as a case study for solving corporate problems ethically. "What did you think?" "Mom, I'm proud of you. All my classmates were impressed when I said my mom works there and uncovered the issues." Emily felt a wave of emotion. Her daughter's recognition meant more than any promotion or raise. "Mom, there's something else I want to tell you." "What is it?" "I decided to change my focus. I want to specialize in business law and compliance. You inspired me to use law to make a difference in people's lives." After hanging up, Emily reflected on how confronting Richard had created ripples of positive change extending far beyond the company. 2 weeks later, Emily was reviewing reports in her new office when Barbara knocked on the door. "Emily, there's someone here who wants to talk to you." It was Mrs. Dorothy, the first resident they had visited in Meadow Gardens. Dear, I came to thank you in person, the elderly woman said, her eyes glistening. Mrs. Dorothy, you didn't have to come all this way. How's the house? It's a dream, sweetheart. They did everything new, better than I imagined. But I didn't just come for that. No? I came because I want you to know you changed my life. For the first time, I feel like someone cared about me as a person, not just a number. Emily hugged the woman, moved. Mrs. Dorothy, you have no idea how much this means to me. And I brought something for you. Mrs. Dorothy pulled a small pot with a succulent cutting from her bag. I planted this with soil from my new backyard. I want you to have it to remember that little seeds can grow into beautiful things when nurtured with care. Emily accepted the gift, touched by the simplicity and symbolism of the gesture. After Mrs. Dorothy left, Barbara remarked, Emily, what you did, it didn't just change those families' lives, it changed ours too. Jennifer is more motivated than ever. Richard is making real progress in therapy. And I've rediscovered my purpose. What's your purpose, Mrs. Barbara? To ensure our company is an instrument for positive change in the community. Not just a business, but a force for good. And Mr. Wilson? How is he handling all these changes? Better than I expected. Therapy is helping him understand the motivations behind his actions, and he's genuinely committed to change. That's good. Real transformation takes time. Emily, there's something I'd like to propose. What is it? I want you to become our partner, not just an employee, but a true business partner. Emily was speechless for a moment. Mrs. Barbara, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept. You deserve to own a part of what you're helping to build. But I don't have the money to buy shares in the company. You don't need to. Your stake will be based on the value you've brought and continue to bring to the company. Your knowledge, your integrity, your vision. Emily thought of her mother, her daughter, all the families in Meadow Gardens. She thought of how her life had completely changed in just a few weeks. I accept, she said, but on one condition. What? I want us to create a fund for social projects. Part of the company's profits should always go toward helping underprivileged communities. Barbara smiled. Agreed. In fact, that's exactly the kind of thing I hoped you'd propose. 3 months later, Emily was in her office preparing a report for the monthly partners meeting when Jennifer walked in with big news. Emily, I just got a call from the district attorney's office. They've finished investigating our self-report. And the outcome? Praise. They said our handling of the case was exemplary and will serve as a model for other companies. There'll be no criminal charges against the company or my father. What about administrative penalties? Minimal, a symbolic fine and a requirement to maintain our new controls for at least 5 years. But we were already doing that anyway. And Mr. Wilson, personally. Also, a symbolic fine and community service. He'll give talks on business ethics to small business owners. Emily laughed. He's really going to give ethics talks? Yes. The district attorney said who better to speak about the consequences of unethical behavior than someone who's lived it firsthand. Makes sense. How did he take it? Better than we expected. He said it'll be a chance to turn his negative experience into something constructive. That afternoon, Emily visited Meadow Gardens to oversee the delivery of the last corrected homes. All 23 families were already in their renovated houses, and another 50 families were receiving newly built homes, meeting the updated quality standards. Emily, shouted a child running toward her. It was Michael, the 7-year-old son of Robert and Susan Miller. Hi, Michael. How are you liking the new house? It's so cool, and my bedroom outlet doesn't shock me anymore. Emily laughed and chatted with Susan, who approached. Emily, I don't know how to thank you. The house is perfect. Even better than homes in the wealthy neighborhoods. Susan, this was our obligation from the start. You deserve quality no matter your income. You know what makes me happiest? Susan said. What? My Michael wants to be an engineer when he grows up. He spends all day drawing houses and saying he wants to build beautiful homes for people, just like you did. Emily felt her eyes well up with tears. Seeing how her actions were inspiring the next generation was more rewarding than any professional recognition. During the ceremony for the final home deliveries, the mayor gave a speech praising Wilson Construction as an example of corporate social responsibility. Several other builders were present, interested in learning how to implement similar programs. After the ceremony, Emily found Richard talking with some residents. She moved closer to listen. "Mr. Wilson," said Mrs. Dorothy, "I want you to know I forgive what happened before. Everyone deserves a second chance." "Thank you, Mrs. Dorothy. Your words mean a lot to me. And I want you to know how proud I am to see how you've changed. It shows people can grow and become better." Emily watched Richard struggling to hold back his emotions. She stepped closer and gently touched his arm. "Mr. Wilson, how do you feel?" "Humbled and proud at the same time," he replied. "Humbled by what I did, but proud to see what we've built from it." "And how's the therapy going?" "It's helping me a lot. I understand now that my problems didn't start with greed, but with fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of losing everything, fear of disappointing my family. And now? Now, I understand that true success isn't about how much money you have, but how many lives you touch in a positive way." Emily smiled. "Mr. Wilson, thank you for sharing that with me. It shows how much you've truly changed." "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think you can respect me again? You don't have to like me, but—" "Respect?" Emily thought for a moment before answering. "Mr. Wilson, respect is something built through consistent actions over time. What I can say is that your actions these past months show someone committed to change. That's the beginning of respect." "That's enough for me," he said, looking genuinely grateful. 6 months later, Emily was in Washington, D.C., attending a national conference on corporate social responsibility. She had been invited to present Wilson Construction's case as a study in organizational transformation. During her presentation, Emily shared the entire story, from the moment Richard tore up her contract to the implementation of the company's new social programs. "What I've learned," she told an audience of 300 business leaders, "is that crisis can be opportunity. When we face our problems head-on instead of trying to hide them, we create possibilities for transformation that benefit everyone involved." After the presentation, several executives approached Emily, interested in implementing similar programs in their companies. "Emily," said an executive from a major telecommunications firm, "your story is inspiring. But I have a practical question. How did you manage to convince the owners to invest so much money in fixing the problems?" "I didn't have to convince them," Emily replied. "When people understand the human impact of their decisions, the right choice becomes obvious." "But what about the financial impact? Didn't your company suffer?" "On the contrary, our reputation improved so much that we now have more contracts than we can handle. Clients want to work with companies they trust." A businesswoman from a construction company in the Midwest commented, "Emily, what would you do if you faced resistance from the company's leadership? What if the owners didn't want to invest in fixing the problems?" "That's a tough question," Emily admitted, "but I believe there's always a way to help someone understand the value of ethics. Sometimes it's through numbers, sometimes through emotions, and sometimes through legal consequences. And if nothing worked, then it would be time to make hard decisions about where we want to work and what kind of people we want to be." After the conference, Emily received dozens of invitations for consulting and speaking engagements. Her story had become a case study at several universities, and executives from across the country wanted to learn from her experience. Back in New York City, Emily found a surprise waiting in her office. It was a thank you letter signed by all the families from Meadow Gardens. "Dear Emily, we want you to know that you didn't just change our homes, you changed our lives. Our children grew up seeing that there are people willing to fight for what's right. That's a lesson they'll carry forever. You taught us that we deserve respect and quality, no matter our social standing. That changed how we see ourselves and our place in the world. Thank you for never giving up on us. With love and eternal gratitude, the families of Meadow Gardens." Emily read the letter 3 times, growing more emotional with each reading. She carefully placed it in her office drawer, next to the small succulent Dorothy had given her months earlier. That evening, during dinner with her mother and daughter, Emily reflected on the extraordinary journey she had been through. "Mom," Olivia said, "today my teacher mentioned that you were invited to teach at Columbia. It's true, Emily confirmed. They want me to teach a course on business ethics and social responsibility. Are you going to accept? Margaret asked. I think so. It would be a way to spread the lessons we've learned. I'm proud of you, dear, Margaret said. You took a terrible situation and turned it into something beautiful. It wasn't just me, Mum. It was the whole Wilson family being willing to change, workers like George speaking the truth, and the families in Meadow Gardens being willing to forgive and give second chances. But you were the catalyst, Olivia insisted. Without your courage to confront what was wrong, none of this would have happened. Emily smiled, thinking about how that terrible day when Richard tore up her contract had become the first day of a new life. 2 years later, Emily was in her office, now much larger, reflecting her new position as a partner in the company, when she received an unexpected visit. It was Michael Thompson, the company's former accountant, accompanied by a nervous-looking young man. Emily, may I introduce my nephew, Kevin? He works as an accountant at a logistics company and is facing a situation similar to what you dealt with 2 years ago. Emily invited them to sit. Tell me, Kevin, what's going on? It's like what happened here, the young man said, visibly tense. My boss is forcing employees to falsify tax documents. When I refused, he threatened to fire me. And you want to know how to proceed? Yes. My uncle told me his story and said you might be able to guide me. Emily spent the next hour advising Kevin on how to document the irregularities, protect himself legally, and approach the situation constructively. The most important thing, she said, is to remember you're not alone. There are always people willing to support those who do the right thing. But what if I lose my job? Kevin, losing a job where you're forced to be dishonest isn't a loss. It's liberation. And in my experience, when you act with integrity, new opportunities always arise. After Kevin and Ryan left, Emily thought about how many people were facing situations similar to what she had endured. She decided it was time to formalize her work, supporting ethical whistleblowers. At the monthly partners meeting, Emily proposed creating the Integrity Institute, a non-profit offering legal, psychological, and financial support to employees reporting misconduct in their companies. It's an excellent idea, said Jennifer, and it shows how our company has evolved from being part of the problem to part of the solution. Barbara agreed enthusiastically. Emily, you have our full approval and financial backing for this initiative. What about me? Asked Richard. Can I contribute somehow? Actually, yes, Emily replied. Your unique experience could help business owners understand the consequences of unethical choices before it's too late. It'd be an honor to participate, Richard said. The Integrity Institute was officially launched 6 months later at a ceremony in the Newark Mayor's office auditorium. Mrs. Dorothy was the guest of honor, cutting the symbolic ribbon alongside Emily. Dear, the older woman said to Emily, look how far we've come. From a torn contract to an institute that will help hundreds of people. Mrs. Dorothy, none of this would have been possible without support from people like you. Nonsense. You're the one who had the courage to do what needed to be done. During the ceremony, several officials spoke about the importance of initiatives like the Integrity Institute. The district attorney who'd handled the Wilson construction case gave an especially moving speech. The Wilson construction case proves it's possible to address serious corporate issues constructively, prioritizing repair over punishment, transformation over destruction. After the event, Emily received over 50 requests for help from employees at various companies facing similar ethical dilemmas. 3 years after the day Richard tore up her contract, Emily was giving a lecture at Columbia University when a student asked a question that made her reflect deeply. Professor Emily, if you could go back in time, would you change anything about how you handled the situation? Emily thought for a long moment before answering. You know, I ask myself that often, and the answer is, I might have acted sooner. Maybe I shouldn't have hesitated so long before taking a firm stand against the misconduct. But don't you think the hesitation helped you fully understand the situation? Perhaps. Maybe the time I took was necessary for me to address things more maturely and constructively. And today, how do you view Mr. Richard Wilson? I see a man who made serious mistakes but had the courage to acknowledge them and genuinely change. That doesn't erase what he did, but it shows people can transform when they face the consequences of their actions. After class, Emily walked through the Columbia campus, reflecting on her journey. Her phone rang. It was Olivia, now a law school graduate working at the Integrity Institute. "Mum, we just got a very important case. An employee at a large multinational company uncovered billion-dollar irregularities. She wants our help." "Olivia, do you have enough experience to handle something of this magnitude?" "I have the best teacher in the world," Olivia replied, laughing. "And besides, I won't be alone. We have a whole team now." Emily smiled, proud to see how her daughter was walking a path of integrity and social justice. "All right. But always remember, the goal isn't to destroy, it's to build something better." "I learned from the best, Mom." That evening, Emily had dinner with her extended family. Her mother, Margaret, her daughter, Olivia, Barbara, Jennifer, and surprisingly, Richard. "Emily," Richard said during dessert, "I want to thank you again for giving me the chance to change. I know you could have chosen a much more punitive path." "Richard, thank you for taking the opportunity. Not everyone does that." "Today I got an interesting call," he commented. "A businessman from Chicago wants me to speak to a group of entrepreneurs about ethics and the consequences of bad decisions." "Will you accept?" Barbara asked. "I will. It's my way of turning my mistakes into something useful for others." Margaret, who had stayed quiet during the conversation, finally spoke. "Richard, can I say something?" "Of course, Mrs. Margaret. I'm proud to see how you've changed. It shows it's never too late for someone to become better." Richard was moved by her words. "Thank you, Mrs. Margaret. That means a lot coming from you." Emily watched the scene, amazed at how relationships could be rebuilt with honesty and genuine effort to change. 5 years after that fateful day, Emily was in her office reviewing the annual report for the Integrity Institute when her secretary announced an unexpected visit. "Emily, there's a delegation of Japanese businessmen here. They want to learn about our work." Emily welcomed the group, and through an interpreter, heard they had come to the United States specifically to study the Wilson model for corporate problem solving. "In Japan," the delegation leader explained, "we have a concept called Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. But what you've created here goes beyond that. You turned a crisis into an opportunity for deep transformation." "Thank you," Emily replied. "But I must say, we didn't invent anything new. We just applied timeless principles of honesty, responsibility, and compassion in the corporate world. Even so, the results are impressive. We'd like to document your process to teach Japanese entrepreneurs." Emily agreed to collaborate, pleased to see her work inspiring change on an international scale. After the meeting with the Japanese delegation, Emily got a call from George Williams, the former construction worker she had promoted to quality supervisor. "Miss Emily, I have some news to share." "What is it, George?" "My daughter got accepted into Columbia for civil engineering. She wants to follow in your footsteps and work in ethical construction." Emily was moved. "George, that's wonderful. Send her my congratulations." "She said she wants to intern at our company to learn how to do construction the right way." "Of course we'll take her. It'll be an honor to have her on the team." After talking with George, Emily reflected on how one decision to confront wrongdoing had created ripples of positive impact that continued expanding years later. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're reading from. If you have something to share with us, leave your honest thoughts in the comments. Do you think Emily made the right choice by standing up to her boss? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us.